Good morning, everyone. Coming to you from Atlanta once again. Be here a couple more days. Looking forward to participating in the workshop that's going on this afternoon. That's kind of the major part I have to play. So um, things are going well here. Looks like all of you are doing well also, working with the class. Please, if you have any questions at any time, let me know. You can get to me via email or text messaging or Twitter. I do check those all throughout the day, even though I'm at this conference. I just finished working through your blog posts, and I wanted to commend you all for doing a great job with those. Um, I wanted to make just a few brief comments. A lot of you made, or I should say, added elements to your rubrics for evaluating websites that I hadn't even thought of before. So wanted to commend you for doing a very good job there. Um, Also, I wanted to just have us think through a few different things that many of us pointed out, but maybe didn't think through in a lot of detail or take to their complete end. For example, no matter what extension your website has, so even if it's an edu, or gov, or an org, you need to make sure that the information there is still reliable, still credible, that the interpretations are still sound. It is true that looking at the extension is a good baseline to start with, but that doesn't mean that the edu or the gov or the org websites are automatically credible and reliable. It's still a good idea to check out who the authors are, see their background, where they're coming from, what they're talking about, and then we always need to check our web sources against others. And that is something that many of you talked about in your blog posts, and many of you cross-reference what you found on the internet with what you had read in the mile. I think it's a very good method for evaluating web sources. Sorry, I'm reaching over for my notes. Thinking about some of the things that I didn't necessarily think about before. Santiago pointed out that it's a good idea to see if a website has virus protection or has been what's the right word, run through virus protection. I think that's always smart, and it's something that I hadn't thought of. Lysette mentioned that we need to think about whether or not a website contradicts itself. Going along with that, Joy was the one that mentioned thinking about interpretation. So I think that the idea of a website contradicting itself and the idea of accounting for multiple interpretations kind of go hand in hand. Just because a website provides an interpretation that you don't quite buy, that doesn't mean that the whole thing is invalid. It still might cite important sources that are there in large blocks that you could still take advantage of, that you could still learn from. What's more important sometimes, not always, but what's more important sometimes than the interpretation is the sources that were drawn upon. So we can still say, well, this author, they chose very sound, very good primary sources. It's just that I don't know if I completely follow them to their conclusions. And so I wanted to bring that up because, as we've talked about the nature of history being somewhat fluid in terms of having multiple perspectives, we have to think about that as we evaluate sources, and we don't necessarily want to dismiss every source out of hand just because there's one part of it that isn't quite right. Something that I pointed out to a few of you in my comments on the blog was that even if a source like the Office of the State Historian site doesn't list the author or the date of publication, which often happens on that site, it doesn't automatically mean that it's invalid. If historians dismissed primary sources or other secondary sources automatically because of any little imperfection, we wouldn't have anything to write from. And so here's where that critical thinking comes back in. And so hopefully that kind of ties together everything that you were all thinking about with this second blog post. Again, I think you all did an excellent job. Thanks for thinking through the questions that were posed there, this problem of evaluating websites in a very, very kind of critical and thoughtful way.